My boss blocked every promotion, started LinkedIn profile and got headhunted for VP role at competitor fast. My boss didn't even pretend to read my promotion packet this time. He held it with 2 fingers like it was something sticky, glanced at the first page, then slid it back across the table toward me. "You're not ready," he said, already reaching for his coffee, already looking past me at his monitor like the meeting was done. The conference room smelled like burnt espresso and dry erase marker, and the fluorescent lights made everything feel slightly sick. I could hear my own breathing, shallow and fast, because my chest had tightened the second he said those words. Not because I didn't expect it. Because I did. Because I had expected it for the 3rd time in a row. My hands were flat on the table and I could feel the paper trembling under my fingertips, like my body was vibrating with all the things I wasn't saying. I stared at him for a second too long, trying to find the crack where honesty might slip through. "Can you tell me what specifically is missing?" I asked, and my voice sounded careful, like I was trying not to spook him. He sighed like I'd asked him to do manual labor. "It's not one thing," he said. "It's maturity. Executive presence. You do good work, Megan, but leadership is different." He finally looked at me, eyes cool, and added, "And I don't want you getting ahead of yourself." The words landed in my stomach like a stone. Getting ahead of myself. Like ambition was a character flaw. Like I was a kid reaching for the cookie jar. It was a Wednesday afternoon when I realized I was never going to be promoted in that building, no matter how many times I proved I deserved it. I'd been at the company for 5 years. Started as an analyst, clawed my way into product operations, became the person everyone pinged when something broke or when a launch needed rescuing. My calendar was a war zone. People would message me with quick question that turned into, "Can you fix this whole system?" I didn't mind being useful. I liked being competent. But somewhere along the way, my usefulness became my cage. My boss, Ron, was the kind of manager who loved having a right hand. He called me that sometimes in meetings. "Megan's my right hand," and people would smile like it was a compliment. It looked good from the outside, my name attached to big projects, my work praised in leadership meetings, my late nights treated like dedication. But inside our one-on-ones, it was always the same, vague feedback, moving goalposts, a soft no wrapped in corporate language. The first time I went for a promotion, I'd been hopeful in that naive way you are when you still believe effort leads to reward. I built a packet with metrics, launches completed, revenue impact, cross-functional wins, testimonials from stakeholders. Ron told me he loved the initiative and then said there wasn't budget. 2 months later, they promoted a guy from another team, someone who hadn't even shipped a product yet, because he had leadership potential. Ron congratulated him in Slack with a bunch of exclamation marks. The second time, I asked Ron to help me map out what I needed to do. I wanted it in writing because I was tired of chasing fog. He smiled and said, "I like that you're hungry." Then he gave me a list that sounded reasonable until you looked closer. Lead a cross-org initiative, mentor a junior hire, present to execs, demonstrate strategic thinking. I did all of it. I led an initiative that shaved 2 weeks off our launch cycle. I mentored 2 new hires because HR couldn't find a buddy for them. I presented to execs so many times I started keeping backup slides in my sleep. When review season came, Ron said, "You've made progress," like I was learning to tie my shoes. Then, a few weeks after that second rejection, I found out he'd been telling people I was indispensable. Not in a complimentary way. In a "we can't move her" way. It slipped out during a happy hour when one of the directors, a little too tipsy, said, "Ron would lose his mind if you ever left. He'd have to actually do work." Everyone laughed, including Ron. I laughed too, because that's what you do when your boss is standing there. But the laugh felt sour in my mouth. So by the time we got to the 3rd promotion attempt, the one in the conference room with the burnt espresso smell, I wasn't hopeful anymore. I was prepared. I had the packet. I had the receipts. I had the calm voice. And I still got the same no, dressed up with new vocabulary. Executive presence, maturity, don't get ahead of yourself. I walked out of that meeting feeling like I'd been shrink-wrapped. Ron went right into his next call. I could hear him laughing with someone through the glass as I passed his office, like he hadn't just cut the legs out from under me. At my desk, I opened my laptop and stared at my calendar for the rest of the day. Back-to-back meetings. A product launch review. A quick sync with sales. A retrospective that would somehow become my responsibility. It hit me that my life at that company was a loop: fix, deliver, absorb stress, get praised, stay stuck. That night, I went home and didn't talk to anyone for an hour. I sat on my couch in sweatpants with my hair still in a tight bun because I couldn't even be bothered to take it down yet. The room was quiet except for my fridge making that low hum. I kept replaying Ron's tone when he said, "You're not ready." Like he was the gatekeeper of readiness. Like if he said it enough times, it would become true. I wasn't even thinking I'm going to leave. Not yet. I was thinking, I need evidence outside this building that I'm real. Because after a while, when someone keeps telling you you're almost good enough, you start checking yourself for cracks you never had. So I did something that sounds small but felt huge. I made a LinkedIn profile. I know. Everyone has one. People have them like they have email addresses. But I didn't. Not really. I had an old, half-dead account from years ago with a blurry photo and a college internship listed like a relic. At my company, LinkedIn was treated like flirting with leaving. Ron had made jokes about people who live on LinkedIn being disloyal. It was childish, but it worked on people. It worked on me, for too long. That night, I updated everything. I chose a photo where I looked like myself, tired, yes, but solid. I rewrote my headline 3 times. I listed my actual scope instead of the watered-down version on my job description. I added metrics. I added the projects Ron loved to brag about publicly. I wrote it all out until my hands stopped shaking when I typed. When I clicked open to work, I felt like I was doing something illicit. My heart was pounding. I set it to recruiters only, not public, but still, just seeing that green toggle felt like stepping over a line. I went to bed expecting nothing. I woke up to 3 messages. The first was a recruiter asking if I'd be open to chatting about a senior manager, product ops role. The second was a founder from a small startup asking if I did consulting. The third was a headhunter from a firm I'd heard of, one of those agencies that works on big placements, saying they'd come across my profile and would love to connect. I stared at my phone in bed, hair in my face, blinking like the screen was lying. I sat up and read them again. My chest felt tight, but in a different way. Like a door had cracked open and fresh air rushed in. Over the next week, more messages came. Some were garbage, exciting opportunity with no details, roles that were clearly not my field. But a few were real. People asked smart questions. They referenced my metrics. They said things like, "Your background is rare, and you've clearly led at scale." No one asked if I was ready. They asked if I was interested. I started doing calls during lunch breaks, sitting in my car with my laptop balanced on the steering wheel, trying to keep my voice calm while my heart raced. The first recruiter call felt like talking about a different person, "So tell me about your impact." I almost laughed. I had to stop myself from saying, "My boss says I don't have executive presence." Instead, I talked about what I'd built. What I'd fixed. What I'd led. And the more I spoke, the more I remembered how big my work actually was. Then the headhunter, her name was Dana, sent me an email that made my stomach flip. "Have you ever considered a VP of operations role?" I read it 3 times. VP. Like vice president. Like the title that sat so far above me at my current company I barely saw it in org charts. I assumed it was a typo or a bait and switch. I replied politely, expecting her to correct it. She didn't. She asked for a call. On the call, Dana didn't flatter me. She was blunt in that way headhunters are when they've seen enough resumes to be unimpressed by buzzwords. She asked about org size, headcount, budget, the messiest launch I'd ever salvaged, how I handled conflict, what metrics I drove, how I influenced without authority. I answered, and halfway through I realized something. I wasn't stretching. I wasn't pretending. I was describing what I already did, just without a title that matched it. Dana told me the role was at a competitor, similar industry, slightly larger, faster growth. They'd had churn in leadership and needed someone who could stabilize ops and scale process without strangling the product teams. Your experience is exactly that, she said. And you've been doing it without the formal authority, which, frankly, is harder. I felt this strange heat behind my eyes. Not tears, not yet. More like my nervous system didn't know where to put the validation. I went through interviews in secret. I used PTO for the longer ones. I wore a blazer over a plain top and did video calls from my dining table with my laptop propped on books so the camera angle didn't make me look like a gremlin. I talked to the new company's CEO, their COO, department heads, even a few individual contributors who would report into me. The questions were intense, but they weren't designed to keep me out. They were designed to understand me. Meanwhile, at my current job, Ron kept acting like I'd be there forever. He assigned me an even bigger initiative and said, "This will be great visibility for you." Visibility. Not promotion. Visibility like a spotlight you never get to step out of. There was a moment, 2 weeks into the interview process, when Ron asked me to draft a strategy doc he was going to present to the exec team. He said, "Just get me the bones. I'll make it executive." He smiled like that was funny. My stomach turned. I thought about all the times my work had been rebranded as his leadership. All the times he'd called me indispensable like it was a compliment. All the times he'd blocked me and then acted surprised I still wanted more. The offer came on a Monday morning. Dana called me, and I answered from a stairwell at work because my voice didn't feel safe at my desk. "They want you," she said. "VP of Operations. They're moving fast." My knees actually went weak. I sat down on the stairs, gripping the railing with one hand. "Are you serious?" I whispered, like the building might hear. Dana laughed. "Yes. Serious. They want to close this week." When she emailed the offer letter, I stared at the salary number until my eyes blurred. It was more than I'd ever made. It wasn't just a raise. It was a different life. It was the kind of money that says, "We trust you." The title made my throat tighten. VP. Me. I went back to my desk and pretended to work for the rest of the day. My hands shook when I typed. My heart kept doing these weird little leaps. I felt like a person walking around with a secret sun in their chest. When I finally accepted, I didn't feel giddy. I felt calm. Like a part of me that had been waiting quietly finally got to stand up. Giving notice to Ron was surreal. I booked a meeting. I sat in his office, the same place where he'd slid my promotion packet back to me. He leaned back, relaxed, like he expected a routine update. I said, "I'm resigning." For a second, he just blinked. "What?" he said, laughing like he'd misheard. "No, you're not." "I am," I said, and my voice sounded steadier than I felt. "I've accepted another role." His smile dropped. "Where?" he asked, too sharp. I told him. I watched his face change in real time, confusion, then disbelief, then something like panic. "They hired you as what?" he asked. "VP of Operations," I said, and the words felt heavy and real in my mouth. Ron actually scoffed, like the title offended him. "That's ridiculous," he said. "You're not, Megan, you're not. Not ready." The same old line trying to claw its way out. I didn't let him finish. "I start in 4 weeks," I said. "I'll send a transition plan." He leaned forward, voice low. "This is a mistake," he said. "You're going to get exposed." I felt a strange calm wash over me. Not anger. Not triumph. Just clarity. "I've been exposed," I said. "Every day here. I'm the one who's been holding things together." Ron's mouth opened, then closed. He stared at me like he didn't recognize me without my usual careful politeness. 2 hours later, he emailed me offering a promotion. Not immediately, of course. He offered a path and exploration and future leadership opportunities. It was all vague, all air. It was the same fog he'd fed me for years, just delivered in a more urgent font. I didn't respond to that email. I forwarded it to my personal account and filed it away like a souvenir of a lesson learned too late. The day my resignation became public, people reacted exactly how you'd expect. Some congratulated me with genuine warmth. A couple of leaders suddenly wanted exit chats because they were surprised. Ron acted like he was supportive in front of others, telling people he was so proud of me, like he hadn't been the one holding the door shut. Then, the most telling thing happened. In a leadership meeting I was invited to for transition purposes. I watched Ron try to assign my work to 3 different people. 3. And all 3 looked at him like he'd lost his mind. Someone finally said, "Wait, Megan does all of that," and Ron laughed awkwardly and said, "Well, she likes to stay busy." I almost laughed too, but I didn't. I just sat there, feeling this quiet satisfaction that my absence would tell the truth no one wanted to say out loud while I was there. When I started at the Competitor, it was fast and intense. The first week I had back-to-back meetings with department heads who wanted me to fix everything yesterday. I went home exhausted, but it was a different kind of exhaustion. It wasn't the drained feeling of being undervalued. It was the tiredness you get when you're actually doing the job you were meant to do. And the weirdest part? No one questioned if I belonged there. They assumed I did, because they hired me. The imposter voice still showed up sometimes, whispering Ron's old lines. But every time it did, I pulled up my own notes, my own metrics, my own record of what I'd accomplished. I reminded myself that being blocked doesn't mean you're unworthy. Sometimes it just means someone benefits from keeping you small. Thanks for watching. If you've ever had a boss keep moving the goalposts or blocking your growth until you finally took your talent somewhere else, share your story in the comments. I want to hear how you got out, and I know someone listening needs that reminder that there's life on the other side of not ready.